So, this summer I was blessed with the opportunity to go to a concert. More specifically, a Panic at the Disco concert, which is super cool and it was honestly a blast. But I think the more interesting story was the journey to where I was staying the night before. My cousin was going to go with me, so I ended up staying at her place. And on the ride there, I ended up making a couple of stops that I didn't originally intend on, but it happened. So that's what I'm going to tell you about now, I guess. My dad drove us down to my cousin's, which should have only been an hour trip. It takes exactly an hour and 10 minutes to get from my place to my cousin's house. But what happened was not that. It ended up being a 5-hour trip because of all the stops that we made. First, we stopped at a mall so that we could get dinner, which made sense, so it wasn't that big of a surprise to me, and not much happened there that was shocking. We got food, and then we continued on the road. Only it was at this point that we realized, well, my dad realized, that his favorite store to shop at was going to be closed if he dropped me off first. So we ended up at this, outdoorsman shop. And that is where we spent the next 3 hours, because I don't think my dad realizes it, but he is a shopper and he will take forever to shop. He thinks he's quick, but he's not. And that's fine, because he ended up buying me a cute shirt, so, I'm all good with it. I spent most of this time with Penn kind of just browsing the store, because, what else are you going to do when your dad shops until literally closing time? But they had a fish tank, so we spent a lot of time there just kind of watching the fish swim back and forth. You can see them here. They were pretty cool and a lot more interesting than the rows of clothing and fishing rods that they had. I ended up spending at least 10 minutes looking at gear ratios on reels, because that's what you do when you're at a sports store, right? Well, apparently that's what I do. So they also had a lot of cool taxidermy animals all over the place, and I've always found that to be an interesting art form. So it was cool to see all the different kind of animals that they had. How are you supposed to even taxidermize fish, is my point. How do you stuff a fish? Doesn't even make sense. But, they had some. They had birds, they had goats. They had a good variety. At one point, when we were ultimately bored, I challenged Penn to try and find a cool fishing lure for Brew, because I know Brew likes to fish, and we figured we might as well, get him something. So we went through all the rows of different fishing baits and lures, and we found the best ones that we thought fit for Brew. Penn picked these cute little lobster things, but I settled for these, I don't even know what you'd call them. They kind of look like fish, but it says catch 45% more. So that's an important little fact you have to consider when you're buying bait. Anyway, so we got him some baits so that he could, fish better. And then we finally were kicked out of the store, and that's when we left to my cousin's house. And I don't know when this came up, but at some point she mentioned she has a hamster. So of course Penn had to see it, because it's a hamster. When isn't Penn stoked for a tiny little fluffy animal, am I right? So we played with this little thing until I finally remembered that I was in a household full of mourning people, and that if I was going to even hope to survive, I would have to go to bed at a reasonable hour. So our day ended with this little hamster, and I don't know about you guys, but that's a pretty stellar way to end a day.